Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Clark, and I am a behavior analyst with Community Living Toronto. Today, I'm here, and we're going to talk a little bit about building sleep routines. So I work with children with developmental disabilities and their families across a variety of behavioral and daily living concerns, and sleep is one of the most common areas that we get requests for. So Community Living Toronto itself supports people with developmental disabilities and their families through a wide range of services and supports across the lifespan. And I'm sure we'll give you a little bit more information about some of the services that we have as well, if you're interested. So before we get started, I just wanted to acknowledge that sleep can be incredibly stressful for families. So a lot of parents feel exhausted, frustrated, or like they maybe tried everything. So every child is different and every family situation is different. There's no one perfect sleep strategy that works for everyone. So today we'll be talking about some approaches that may help and discussing ways that we can make sleep feel a little bit more manageable. Okay, so we'll talk about some common sleep challenges families run into.
Safe and Healing Basketball is on today. Please meet.
Sorry, everyone online. We get some announcements here at the school, so I'll just pause when the announcements come on. So we're gonna go through some common sleep challenges families run into, as I said, some of the things that can impact sleep, and then we're gonna talk about a few practical strategies that you might be able to try at home. A few housekeeping things before we get in. If you do have any questions, Hannah is moderating the chat for us, so you can raise your hand. You can type it in the chat or whatever you need to do throughout the presentation, and she'll flag me down. Okay, so some ideas may work for your child and others may not, and that's okay in this presentation. Sleep is very individualized, and sometimes it takes a bit of a trial and error to figure out what helps. I was going to pose a question, but we don't have a lot of people here in person. So I was just going to ask, what are some of the sleep challenges that you might be dealing with in your family right now? I'm not sure if anyone is available to participate online, but I'll throw the question out there. We'll just give it a second. Yep. That's a common one. Waking in the middle of the night is a very common sleep challenge. So we'll go through some of yeah. Not wanting to go back to sleep or sleep resistance is another one that is very common as well.
Transition from co-sleeping with a 4-5-year-old.
Yeah. Wanting to sleep with parents is another one that we talk about a lot. Okay, so that's great. So a variety of different sleep challenges. So hopefully some of this information can be helpful for you guys today. So a few important things to keep in mind before we get into specific strategies. I just want to acknowledge that sleep can be impacted by a lot of different factors. So these can be routines, sensory needs, anxiety, medical concerns, environmental, and other daily patterns. So because of that, sleep challenges can look very different from one child to another, and strategies often need to be individualized. So support from a registered behavior analyst like myself can sometimes help identify patterns and develop more individualized sleep supports if needed. Common sleep problems. So we heard a few of the common sleep problems out there. These are the ones that we most often hear about from families. So sleep challenges are very common in children with developmental disabilities and neurodivergent children. They're also just common in the general population as well. And they can affect things like your mood, your learning daytime behaviors, and overall family stress. So some children may have difficulty falling asleep. Other children may be waking during the night. Some children may be waking very early in the morning or resisting their bedtime routines, or rely on certain people or activities to fall asleep. So over the next few slides, we're going to talk about each one of these in a little bit more detail. Okay, difficulty falling asleep at bedtime. So some children have difficulty falling asleep at bedtime even when they seem tired. So this can look like staying awake long after they've been put to bed, repeatedly leaving the bedroom, seeking out parents, or continuing to play or talk instead of sleeping or settling into sleep. For some children, difficulty falling asleep may be related to their routines, their sensory needs, their feelings of anxiety, or their energy levels, or other learned patterns of behavior that they have at bedtime. Sometimes children are physically in bed, but they are very alert or engaged with other activities or preparing for sleep. So it sounds like some people out there might be experiencing some of these challenges, and we'll talk more specifically. I'm just going to go through all the common sleep problems right now. Some children wake up multiple times throughout the night. So this is a very common one that we hear of as well. And they have difficulty settling back into sleep. So for some families, these wakings may be brief, or others may experience long periods of wakefulness throughout the night overnight. Night waking can reduce both the quality and the amount of sleep children get, and it often impacts everybody in the house and the rest of the family. Some children may seek out parents and want access to preferred items or activities, or need support settling back in as well. So it can really affect parent sleep as well if there's waking throughout the night. So this could look like a cyclical cycle of being asleep, then waking up, maybe falling back asleep for a brief period of time, and then waking up again. And then this can be repeated several times throughout the night. Waking very early in the morning. So some children might wake up very early in the morning and be ready to start their day much earlier than expected or than the family routines allow for. So unlike brief night waking, these children may fully wake up for the day and have difficulty returning to sleep. Over time, early waking patterns can sometimes become part of the child's routine, or their biological clock gets used to rising at a specific time, and it can be difficult to transition them to a different waking hour. Difficulty transitioning to bedtime. So some children may have difficulty transitioning to bedtime or stopping preferred activities before sleep. This can look like protesting, it can look like negotiating for more time, repeatedly leaving their bedroom, or becoming very upset during their bedtime routine. So for many families, bedtime resistance can become very stressful because everyone is already very tired at the end of the day. And it can feel like a master negotiation or a battle that you're engaging in at the very end of your day. The last one is needing specific supports to fall asleep. So some children rely on specific people, so having mom or dad there to fall asleep. They might need specific activities or routines to help them fall asleep. And this might include, as I said, needing a parent nearby. It could include watching videos. For some children, it's being rocked or cuddled, or following a very specific bedtime routine. So these supports often develop naturally because they help children settle and feel comfortable. However, when a child wakes during the night, they may have difficulty falling back asleep if the same conditions are no longer met. Okay, why sleep challenges happen? Sorry. Okay, so sleep challenges are often caused not just by one simple thing. So a child might be experiencing multiple sleep challenges at the same time, and there can be different factors contributing to sleep difficulties. So for some children, routines and learned bedtime patterns may play a role. For others, sensory needs, stress, anxiety, medical concerns, or environmental factors may be contributing to poor sleep. Things like caffeine, screen time before bed, hunger, discomfort, noise, temperature, or changes in routine can all impact sleep quality. So understanding these different contributing factors can help guide more individualized supports and strategies. So lots of different things going on, lots of different factors that we have to consider when we want to improve the sleep of our children and of ourselves also. Okay, so now that we know common sleep problems and we've talked a little bit about what they look like, how can we improve our sleep? Yeah. That is a difficult question to answer. I think it's individualized. Often stress and anxiety are associated with physical characteristics of things like being very upset or crying, being unable to settle, pacing. A lot of those things can be associated with stress or anxiety. But if you do feel like your child may be experiencing that, it might be helpful to talk to your physician about those symptoms, okay? Okay, so now that we've talked about common sleep challenges and factors that may contribute to them, we're going to shift towards some more practical strategies that can help support better sleep. Many sleep supports start with very small, consistent changes to routine. So things like the sleep environment and bedtime habits. While there's rarely one quick fix, building healthy sleep habits over time can make a very meaningful difference. So where do we actually begin? Rather than just trying to change everything all at once, it's most often helpful to look at a few core areas that tend to affect sleep the most. We want to think about the child's sleep environment, their bedtime routine, whether their body and energy levels are ready for sleep, and how adults are responding during bedtime and night waking, and how consistent the plan is from night to night. These areas all work together. So for example, a child might have a great bedtime routine, but if they still have a lot of energy before bed or are getting different responses every night, sleep may still be difficult for them. We'll start with one or two manageable changes and build from there. So we're going to go through these in the next few slides, okay? So the first place we're going to look at is the basic sleep environment. So this is a really good place to start. So small changes to the sleep environment can sometimes make a big difference in the quality of the sleep. So creating a space that feels calm, predictable, dark, and comfortable can help signal that it's time for sleep. Some children also benefit from reducing distractions, like limiting light or having consistent background sound, such as a fan or white noise. And then visual supports or bedtime clocks may also help children understand the expectations around bedtime routines. Another huge question we always get asked is about screen time. When do we stop screen time? How much screen time? All the questions about screen time. My general rule of thumb for even my own sleep or anyone else's sleep is to really just avoid screens 30 to 60 minutes before bed. So as you're transitioning to sleep, try to reduce screen time and transition into more calming activities. And we'll talk a little bit about what those can look like through the bedtime routines. But setting up the environment to be cool, to be dark, really we want to ensure that we're signaling the body that it's time for sleep. So children feel, the onset of sleepiness. Comfort and sensory supports are another area. So some children seek comfort or sensory input at bedtime, and these needs can sometimes maintain sleep difficulties if the only way that they're met is through parent attention. So instead of removing comfort completely, we often want to build more independent and sustainable sleep supports. The first section focuses on comfort items. So these are things like preferred blankets, pillows, stuffed animals, or certain textures that help children feel calm and safe in their environment. The second section focuses on things like deep pressure input. Some children find pressure or snuggle sensations regulating and calming. So things like weighted blankets, consult with your physician or an occupational therapist, body pillows, or compression style bedding may help some children settle more comfortably at bedtime. The final section really focuses on independent sleeps. So the goal is not to suddenly remove parent comfort, but to gradually shift the comfort from the parent to the sleep environment and the bedtime routine. So pairing comfort items with bedtime, keeping responses calm and predictable, and slowly reducing parent cuddling or attention can help children build more independent sleep skills over time. So, if you are spending a lot of time co-sleeping with your child, introducing some of these items during, when you're trying to fade yourself out of their bed and pairing them with you can create an association of calmness or the feeling that they have of safety when they are with you, okay? Sleep routine, this one is very important. So we heard in the chat that some people have a really good sleep routine, while others, might need more practice at it, but building a predictable bedtime routine is really important. So many children benefit from routines that happen in the same order at roughly the same time every night. The first step in choosing a bedtime that is realistic and consistent most nights of the week. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to choose an appropriate bedtime and how to fade that bedtime if it's not appropriate. But a consistent bedtime and wake time helps support the body's natural sleep rhythm. So we want to try and, go to sleep and wake up at the same time every day so our body gets into those rhythms. About 20 to 30 minutes before bed, we're going to begin calming activities that are low stimulation. So no iPad, no action movies, nothing like that. And they're easy to repeat every night. So these might include things like reading a book. It might include things like bath time or very quiet music. Breathing exercises can also be really helpful. There's lots of information about diaphragmatic breathing that you can look up online, or even meditation videos for children that can be very helpful in just calming everyone down. Also, in creating an environment, as we said, just dimming the lights and making sure that everything is set up for sleep. So keeping the same sequence each night is often more important than creating a long or complicated routine. So over time, the routine itself starts to become a cue that sleep is coming. Another thing that can help is visual supports or checklists. Children can follow the routine more independently and reduce repeated verbal reminders from parents. So families do not need to implement everything all at once. Even a short, predictable routine done consistently can help improve bedtime success over time. So it's not about the length of the routine or all of the steps of the routine. It's just having the same predictable routine every night. Again, we want these actions to signal to the child's body that it's time for sleep. There are some challenges with sleep routines, so let's talk about them. So even with a bedtime routine, some children may still experience challenges around sleep. Instead of changing the whole routine, it can be helpful to look at one specific part of the bedtime where they're having difficulties and then making small adjustments from there. So some children have difficulty transitioning away from preferred items. So these activities could be, things that they like to do, or could be parent attention. And these situations, it can be helpful to build access to those things into the evening earlier, rather than removing them all of a sudden right before sleep is about to happen, because that can elicit an emotional response from our child. So families can also gradually reduce cuddling or attention over time instead of stopping all at once. So thinking about if your child really enjoys having an amount of cuddles before bed and things like that, introducing them well before their designated bedtime, or if they like to read or engage with other items in the evening, making sure that they have time for that as well. Other children may simply not feel tired yet at bed. And this is a thing that we're going to talk about, where we don't want to be in bed when we're not tired, because we want to create an association between our bed and our sleep behavior. So if that happens, adding movement or active play before the calming part of the routine may help. So this could include things like going for a walk, trampoline time, or active games earlier in the evening to try to get out some of that energy. Some children also struggle settling once they enter the bedroom. In this case, it can help to move the final calming parts of their bedtime routine into the bed itself. So the space becomes more strongly associated with sleep and with relaxation. We want the bedtime to become associated with calmness and sleep rather than with frustration and conflict. So moving the last few steps of that bedtime routine, whether that's, watching a meditation video or doing deep breathing or reading a book, moving those into the physical bed so that they're already transitioned into that area as they're getting ready for sleep. Biological considerations when talking about sleep routines, okay? So there's a bunch of different biological considerations that we can talk about around sleep routines, but I'm just going to go through a few of them today. So sometimes our sleep difficulties are connected to our physical factors rather than the actual bedtime routine itself. So daytime sleeping can affect how tired a child feels at night. So long naps, especially later in the afternoon, may make it harder for a child to fall asleep at bedtime. Keeping naps consistent and developmentally appropriate can help support nighttime sleep. So trying to reduce those daytime naps or get rid of them altogether if they're at a developmental age that is appropriate. Food and drinks can affect how we sleep. Large meals or sugary snacks close to bedtime may increase energy levels or make it harder for the body to settle and fall asleep. I know if I have a Diet Coke past 3 p.m., it's game over for me. I'm not going to sleep well that night. Caffeine can affect our bodies. So families do not need to avoid snacks completely, but lighter snacks earlier in the evening are often more helpful than larger meals closer to bed. Drinking large amounts of water right before bed can also increase nighttime waking due to bathroom trips or discomfort. So these strategies are not about being overly strict. Instead, they help create conditions that make sleep more likely and more comfortable for the child. Okay, so let's talk about adjusting bedtimes gradually. So if you have a child that goes to bed or is not getting in bed and is not falling asleep, this might be a strategy that is helpful for you. So as I said, the strategy is helpful when children are spending a long time awake in their bed before falling asleep, or when children consistently fall asleep much later than their expected bedtime. The goal here is to help the child learn that bed is strongly associated with sleep. If a child spends long periods of time awake in their bed, playing, talking, asking for attention, or moving around, the connection between bed and sleep is weakened over time. This is sort of like classical conditioning, to get a little behaviorally nerdy with you. So really thinking about, Pavlov's dog experiment, right? So, when Pavlov rang the bell, it associated with food. The food, then the bell began to elicit the salivation without the food present. We want this sort of stimulus pairing to happen the same way with bed and sleep. So bed equals sleep. We want the stimulus of bed to elicit sleep behavior in our children. Instead of putting the child to bed at a set time that may be too early, we first want to observe when they naturally fall asleep. So families can track this over 5 to 7 days and identify the average sleep onset time. So where you're looking for signs of sleepiness in your child and noting what time that is. So this could be yawning, it could be rubbing eyes, it could be, just slowing down of movement or decreased activity. So we're looking for these signs and we want to track this sleep behavior to look at this pattern. Once we've developed that pattern, we'll know sort of their natural sleep time, and we begin the bedtime routine so that the child is getting into bed very close to when they're tired. Parents should also watch for signs of sleepiness, as I said, during this time as well. So when the child is consistently falling asleep about 10 to 15 minutes after getting into bed, the bedtime can gradually be moved earlier by about 10 to 15 minutes every few successful nights. So, if you start at 10:30 and your bedtime goal is 9:45, they're falling asleep in bed at 10:30. A few successful nights, we're going to try to shift that up to 10:15. So we're going to move our bedtime routine to be slightly earlier and having the onset of sleep hopefully occur a little bit earlier each night. And as they are successful at 10:15 a few nights, then moving it to 10 and so on until they get to what their expected bedtime would be. So that is, a very helpful tool to think about, really thinking about, I want bed to equal sleep, and I want them to be falling asleep at an appropriate time, and how we can use some gradual fading techniques to get there. The other sort of practical advice I can give you is a lot of children want attention during bedtime. So there's a few different methods we can use to provide attention during this time if they are asking for it. So this strategy can be helpful for children who repeatedly leave their room, call for their parents, or seek attention after bedtime. So the goal is to give the child one planned opportunity for attention instead of responding repeatedly throughout the night. So the bedtime pass works best when parents stay very calm and predictable and consistent. First, parents give the child one bedtime pass at the start of the night, and this can be a physical ticket or a card or something visual, and you can explain what the pass is. So you can tell your child, you can use this pass tonight one time for a hug, a quick question, or a visit. The important part is that the child only gets one pass per night. When the child uses the pass, parents should respond briefly and positively and keep the interaction calm and short. They're going to avoid turning it into some sort of long conversation or negotiation or an extended sort of cuddle time. After the pass is used, the child is calmly returned to their bed with minimal attention. Parents should use very few words and avoid repeating instructions or their reasoning. The less attention given after the pass is used, the clearer the expectations will be. This is often the hardest part for families. Children may initially increase in crying, yelling, or tantrums, or repeated requests because those behaviors have been honored in the past. Parents need to continue responding calmly and consistently, even if the child becomes upset, redirecting them back to their bed. If parents give extra passes, continue long conversations, provide attention after saying no, the strategy becomes less effective because the child will learn that their persistence will work. The goal here is not to ignore the child emotionally. Parents can remain calm and supportive and reassuring. The focus is on reducing repeated attention after bedtime so the child can learn to settle independently. Over time, the child learns that bedtime is predictable, attention is available in only a planned way, and repeated requests no longer change the outcome of that. So this takes a little bit of effort and it can be difficult, and we'll talk about some of the challenges that can happen during bedtime routines like this. But consistency is really the key here. So if this is something you're looking at wanting to implement, talking about how that's going to happen and the consistent approach as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides. The other providing attention that I suggest, so this strategy is similar to the bedtime pass. This is scheduled visits. But the goal is still to reduce attention-seeking behaviors around bedtime while helping the child learn to sleep more independently. The difference is that instead of giving one pass, parents provide attention on a planned schedule. So the goal is to help the child feel safe and supported while gradually increasing independent sleeping skills. So attention is provided here proactively instead of only after crying, calling out, or leaving the bed. So first, complete the bedtime routine and calmly put the child to bed and keep the interactions calm, brief, and sort of predictable. Avoid things like long discussions, negotiating, or repeatedly telling the child it's time to go to sleep. Next, parents briefly return after a short interval, often starting with something very short, like 1 to 2 minutes. The important part of that is that the parents return based on a schedule and not because the child is crying or tantruming or escalating. Parents often ask what to do if the child is crying when it is time for the scheduled visit. In most cases, parents should still enter at the planned interval. The key difference is that the parent is returning because it is part of the schedule, not because their child is crying, and that's changing the timing of their visits. This helps keep attention predictable and reduces the chances that crying becomes the main way the parent gets back into the room. So during these visits, attention should be calm and brief, and parents can provide quick reassurance statements, brief praise for staying in bed or being quiet, or even a short hug. So you can come in and say, "Oh, I really like the way you're staying in bed. You're doing such a great job." Give them a hug, exit the room again. The visit should only last a few seconds and should not turn into some sort of extended comforting or conversation or bargaining or even playtime. So after the brief visit, the parent leaves again calmly. If the child cries, tantrums, or protests, repeatedly calls out, parents should continue following the planned schedule as consistently as possible. So as the child becomes more successful, settling independently, the time between visits is gradually increased. So for example, parents may move from checking every 2 minutes to every 5 minutes, then every 10 minutes, and extending that time period as their child becomes more able to fall asleep independently. So the key point here is that planned attention works better than repeatedly responding to crying or requests for attention. And consistency helps the child learn that bedtime is predictable, safe, and associated with sleep rather than with parent interaction. So those are a few different approaches that you can take if you're looking to decrease parent attention during bedtimes as well, okay?
30% of
And if
the
you are
time,
looking for assistance with any of these programs and your child does have an intellectual or developmental disability, you can contact us for help here at Community Living Toronto. So ignoring bedtime resistance, let's talk about that. So I want to acknowledge and emphasize that this is more about planning and self-reflection than it is about telling what families they must do or behaviors that they must ignore. So some sleep strategies involve reducing attention to bedtime resistant behaviors, such as crying, yelling, or repeated requests, or leaving the bed. While these strategies can sometimes be effective, they can also be very difficult emotionally for families. Before using these approaches, it's important to think about the practical impact this is going to have not only on your child, but the entirety of the household. So thinking of things like, for example, if the child begins to cry or scream, will it wake up their siblings? Are there other people in the house that will wake up? Are there neighbors or other family members that may be affected by this? Is everyone in the home prepared to respond consistently? Have we talked about what the response is going to look like? How are we all going to respond consistently to these behaviors? And parents should also think about their own emotional responses. Listening to a child cry for extended periods of time can naturally lead to feelings of stress, guilt, frustration, sadness, and these are all normal reactions. Because of this, it can be helpful to plan ahead. So what supports are available? Can caregivers take turns? Is there another strategy that feels more manageable for your family right now? Or what can help parents stay calm and consistent in these moments? So consistency is one of the most important parts of behavior-based sleep strategies. If a parent sometimes ignores the behavior, but then responds after long periods of crying, the child may learn that persistence is the only way that is going to eventually lead to attention. So this can unintentionally strengthen bedtime resistance over time, which is the opposite of what we want to do. Okay, key takeaways here. As we wrap up, the biggest takeaway is that there is usually not one single strategy that fixes sleep difficulties overnight. What tends to make the biggest difference is consistency, predictable routines, and choosing strategies that fit with your child and your family. We also want to remember that sleep is closely connected to behavior, learning, and emotional regulation, and our overall well-being. So supporting sleep can often improve many other areas of our daily life. A lot of these strategies take time, and it is normal for progress to happen gradually rather than immediately. So thinking about small, consistent changes are usually more effective than trying to too many different approaches all at once. That's all that I have for today. I'll take any questions in the chat. I've also put my email up there if you would like to contact me. Sure, yeah.
Yeah, for me, 30% of the time, it's my son is not feeling well, so I acknowledge that.
Not feeling well. So not feeling well is can make it difficult for a sleep routine, right? If a child is feeling, unwell, they have an upset stomach, they have a cold, those things can make it difficult for predictable routines and also change our behavior, right? Like I'm a huge man baby when I get a cold and I also don't want to do a lot of things. So if they are consistently sick, I would say, maybe speaking to your physician about that and then planning around your bedtime routine as well, because that can be very difficult to manage some of those behaviors. But again, making sure your bedtime routine doesn't have to be complicated. It can be tailored to some of those behaviors if they have to happen each night. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you.
Good.
Any tips on helping children stay asleep? I think our biggest issue is him coming to our bed at 2, 3 in the morning and then wanting either putting him back to bed keeps us both up or that he needs to sleep in our bed for the rest of the night.
Yeah, so yes, helping stay asleep, I would look at the biological factors. First of all, like what are they eating? What is their exercise like? All of that. And then, the sleep environment itself. Have we set up the sleep environment for success? Is it cool? Is it dark? Do they have those comfort items? I might spend some time, getting a few comfort items that they prefer, spending some time creating associations between yourself and those items and them in bed, seeing if all of those help. And then I would just redirect to bed again. So the child needs to learn that in the middle of the night is not the time to get attention. So it's minimal interaction. You can, briefly repeat, it's time to be in bed, and then redirecting them back into their bed. this may take many, many times, and it could elicit some challenging behavior as well. So being really thoughtful about how you're going to plan that, because once you are going to do that, you're going to want to follow through. So it can be challenging, but I would start with the biological factors and the sleep environment, see if those make a difference, and then move on to some more intense strategies after that.
Thank you.
So locking a child in their room during bedtime is not something that I typically condone, or that we look at as being a very safe plan, just around things like fire safety, their rights, and things like that. So looking at some other factors that are not related to that. It also doesn't teach independent sleep routines as well, right? So the stuff that we're talking about is really promoting the ability to fall asleep independently. And if there is just a lock on the door that does not allow them to escape, they're not maybe learning some of these independent sleep behaviors, and we're not going to be able to change their behavior over time. So it might be a Band-Aid solution that works right now for you, but over the long term, it's not going to maybe change some of their sleeping habits, which may have effect on them in the future as they grow into adults. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate all your support. We have another one of these coming up in June. Do we know the date? June 11th, and that one will be on toilet training. So we'll tune in for that one. And then again, if you have any questions in the meantime, you can contact me here at my email.